My talk this morning is about making technology personal. And it was because I like this topic that I used that as the label for our conference today. A little bit about me. If you're looking for me online, you can find me on Twitter at @KHR_UX. You can reach me directly at krichardson@infragistics.com. And like all stories, mine this afternoon starts at the beginning. And in fact, for us, it starts at our very beginning, because over millions of years, we have been evolving into the clever, conference-attending people that we are today. And for that time, our technology has evolved more or less right along with us. And this is some of our earliest technology, these sharpened rocks. We improved on these things slowly, incrementally over the course of hundreds of thousands of years. And there's a reason why it took so long. In fact, there are several. Population density, social factors, the slow development of the human brain. But there's one reason in particular that I want to spend time talking about today, and that's the process by which we design them. Consider this. Early in our evolution, both the decision to create or improve a piece of technology and the making of that technology was done by the user of that technology. We designed and built things for ourselves. And as a result, our earliest technology was very personal. And in this way, time passed. People and technology evolving pretty much together until well into the modern era. And then something completely different happened. I'd like to argue that that something completely different thing happened in 1947 and was the invention of the transistor. This was the very first transistor, and when it was invented, it was large enough to sit on top of a desktop. 7 years later, they had become small enough so that you could create personalized transistor radios and radios in cars. 5 years after that, in 1959, they were small enough to fit 10 on a computer chip. And by 2015, IBM had introduced its 7-nanometer chip, which contained 20 billion transistors with a B. From an evolutionary point of view, that much advancement in such a short period of time is absolutely unheard of. To put this in perspective, since that day in 1947, you and I and everybody else has evolved not at all, relatively speaking. On the other hand, the evolution of technology has increased almost exponentially. Our technology is now so intricate, its ability to process information so great, that our own human cognitive and perceptual abilities, honed over millions of years, pale in comparison. And once that happened, once the evolution of technology and of people diverged, our technology stopped being personal. And by that, I don't mean customizable. No, I mean that you and I, human beings, are no longer able to decide, design, and develop technology for ourselves. Because our technology is now so complex, creating it requires specialized teams of highly technical people, us in this room, designing things on behalf of the non-technical people out there. And this is where things stand today. And you say to yourself, all right, so what? Why should the people outside this room care if their technology is personal or it's not? Or in fact, why should we care whether or not technology is personal? The reason it matters is because the average person today doesn't even expect to understand technology. It's enough for them simply to be able to use a thing. The devices and the interfaces that you and I take for granted are as obscure and difficult for them to use as the latest iPhone is to your grandmother.
Hey. Yes, heads are on. So, I know that's the step that you see from this laptop. Our local ISP racing down fiber optic cable speed of 5 to San Francisco. Bouncing off the cycle energy sickness for this to lift in Portugal. The impact will be headed off to submerged, stranded by the cables, tornadoing outside.
Let's look at just a couple of examples. Airplane cockpits are arguably some of the most technically complicated working environments that humanity has ever created for itself. And 90% of all general aviation accidents are due to pilot error. This is a Microsoft product called Microsoft Dynamics. Nobody ever died from using Microsoft Dynamics, though you can imagine wanting to kill yourself if your job was to use Microsoft Dynamics. And just to give you a hint about how difficult it is to use, companies spend between $1,200 and $1,900 per employee training them to use Microsoft Dynamics, and that doesn't include 32 hours of lost time spent in training. And then finally, the iPhone, which if you ask people on the street, is considered to be a very usable piece of technology, and yet Apple spends $8.5 million a year on Apple Store genius salaries, and their only function in life is to teach you how to use their easy-to-use products. The gap that exists between people and technology is not news. The software world is aware of it. The design world is aware of it. The question is, what should we be doing about it? And early on, the answer to this question seemed pretty obvious. If you were a technology company and you saw people having trouble using your company's technology, the question you would ask is the technology working correctly? If the answer is yes, then we can reframe the question and say, what should we do about the problem of people? Because the technology works right. So what should we do about the users of it? Historically, solving the problem of people meant training. Organizations have always relied on training to get people to behave correctly. Training tries to bridge that gap between people and technology by forcing people to adapt to the needs of that technology. But training takes a lot of time, it's expensive, and it really only leads to marginal performance improvements. All right, so if not training, how about usability testing? Traditionally, usability testing meant that people like me would show up at the end of the development cycle and put actual users in front of finished or almost finished products. We would see where they had problems, we would make recommendations on how to fix them, and generally we would pull down industry salaries for doing academic style work. But usability doesn't fix the core problem either. Yes, post hoc usability testing does result in increased ease of use, it does result in a decreased need for training, but it doesn't address the core issues. All right, so once we've eliminated training and usability, what do we focus on next? Well, the obvious answer is the technology itself. In order to create something that is both useful, usable, and understandable for the people for whom we are designing, requires that we change the way in which technology is designed. We need to make technology personal again, and that means a couple of things. First, we need to adapt technology to people. At its most basic level, this means taking advantage of what people do well from an evolutionary point of view. People are very good at recognizing differences. We are very good at remembering 7 plus or minus 2 things at the same time in working short-term memory. We are very good at applying what we have already learned to new situations. We are very good at paying attention to one thing at a time, regardless of what anyone might tell you. We are very bad at paying attention to multiple things at the same time. We are not very good at recall, something that gets worse as people age, and we are very bad at trying to keep large amounts of stuff in working memory. Second, we need to allow the technology that we are designing to be defined by the people for whom we are designing. This means bringing people into the design process itself. This doesn't simply mean asking people what they want. No. What people need is oftentimes very different from what they want, and people only know what they know. It also doesn't mean placing people in the role of designer or technologist. We've moved beyond the good old days of being able to make things for ourselves. That model just doesn't work anymore. To successfully and consistently bridge the gap between people and technology requires a systematic process that evolves our relationship with technology and makes us partners with it rather than users of it. At its core, design is understanding what people are trying to accomplish. And UX design is just understanding what people are trying to accomplish through their interaction with a particular interface. Now, since I was in charge of the conference, I know where everybody comes from, and I know there are a very large percentage of people in here who are not UX designers and are thinking to themselves, yeah, that's cool, but what does this have to do with me? Right? I'm not a UX person, I'm not a designer. To all of you, I have to tell you that whether or not you have the word designer in your job title is irrelevant. The very fact that you are here today means that you are more of a designer than most people out there. And I bet you are already, every day, asking the what are you trying to accomplish questions that good designers ask. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to try and prove it. How many of you have found yourself in a situation like this? Hands up. How many people have been asked to help a relative somewhere with some piece of technology? Yeah, the people who don't have their hands up, I don't believe you. At the point of being asked this question, you kind of have two choices, right? You're in a family gathering. The first choice is grab the nearest bottle of wine, find the bathroom, lock the door. The second is to go over to grandma and say, what are you trying to do, right? Are you trying to call somebody? Are you trying to surf the internet? Are you trying to post pictures onto Facebook? Or in my case, are you trying to find someone you swear was in your contacts, is not in your contacts anymore, but you swear you didn't delete them from your contacts? So what did Apple do? The answer to these questions defines the form of the help that you provide to them, and it's what we as good designers do every day, whether it's designing a mobile application or an e-commerce site or a piece of complex business software. And this is more important than you think. All of those non-technical people outside, they are relying on us to design products that they can use and understand for them. Because of that, it's our responsibility to recognize both the formal work-related business problems and the informal grandmother-related problems. And ask the what are you trying to accomplish questions all the time. See the gap between what technology is making people do and what people need to accomplish, and fix it. And if all of that isn't enough to make you want to jump up, go outside, and do something productive right now, consider this. You will be that grandparent someday, hoping that some snotty kid decides they are dang willing to help you. Do yourself a favor and fix shit now. Thank you very much.